This is Immigrant Podcast with Robinson.
Welcome everybody to the Immigrant Podcast with Robinson. Today, I have with me a woman who decided to become an entrepreneur at an early age, to move on her own at 20 years old to New York City from Belgium, and who just wrote a very interesting book. I'm very happy to have her on the show. Welcome, Saloua Ibaline, to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How do you feel today?
I feel very good. It's a sunny day here in Arizona. I feel very nice.
I heard, and you told me this, that you're a digital nomad. Before we
Exactly,
get started,
yeah.
what is that? People like to know a little bit about that concept.
I think digital nomad really became popular during the during COVID. People start really wondering what this was, but digital nomad existed for a long time. I think there are a few places around the world that have been digital nomad for over a decade, so it's nothing new. But a digital nomad is essentially someone who works from their laptop and travel the world doing so. And so you have full-time digital nomad like myself, which means no home base, and it's just traveling from places to places, countries to countries. But then you have some who are like part-time. They have a home base, and then they travel 6 months out of the year. And it depends how they travel. Some people like the van life. Some people just like Airbnb. Some people, there's so many different things you can do. But the main thing we have in common is we need to have Wi-Fi so we can work from anywhere.
Correct.
That's the idea. Yeah.
And so that you know, I envy you, because I would like to be a digital nomad myself, but family comes first and other things.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Well, it's not for everyone, I'm like single with no children, so it's very easy for me. I can just pick up and go. But I've seen family doing this together, whole family with kids and pets, and they just go on and rent a place for 3 months in Costa Rica, and then they go 6 months there. Like, they manage. It's totally doable. They
yeah, I
homeschool the
think it's
kids.
just a matter of learning the ropes,
Yeah.
and getting into the groove and getting a couple of contracts beforehand, and then take it from there.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Agreed.
Lua, what's your immigration story?
Ula, how much time do we have?
Not enough, but
Immigration story. No,
you
not
can
enough to cover
summarize
everything.
it.
Okay, so to summarize it, I was born in Morocco, and then after my parents divorced, I moved to Belgium with my mom. We were separated from my brothers and sisters, so I was the only one that actually got lucky and moved to Belgium because I was still a baby. But the rest stayed in Morocco, so I didn't meet them until I was probably 12 or 14, and my sister was 18 at that time. So it was really, really a big shock for me, and that first time I actually went back to Morocco. But I grew up in Belgium, and so we were immigrants there. A lot of story going with that, a lot of racism. I felt completely lost. I didn't know, I didn't have identity. I didn't understand. I was confused. So at home, we spoke Arabic, and we had all the cultural norms from an Arabic family. And then in school, it was all westernized, and I was very lost and confused. And my mom didn't really explain that to me because I guess she didn't know it either. And so I was like a rebellious kid who like wanted to do the things that the other girls were doing at school, which was like wear what I want, put makeup on, go out, have boyfriends. But then I would go home and my mom would be like, what? And then we get, we get no, yeah, we would get whipped. It's not, the norms over there. The parents, they didn't hesitate to, I'm not going to use words to beat up, but in our norms in Arabic, it's how it is. You don't talk back to your parents. You put your head down. And so a very confused kid. And then I actually saw my mom really struggling and trying to, find jobs, making money. She had 3 kids in Morocco, 1 in Belgium, and then she got remarried to my stepdad, and we had another kid, another divorce. It's a lot of a drama and things that were not really explained to me as a kid. And so I think subconsciously I repeated the same cycle. And by the age of 17, I left the house on not a good terms. I really, really wanted my freedom. So that was not a good thing. But eventually, after 3 years living in Brussels on my own, I thought I had the blueprints to make it in America. So at 20 years old, I said, well, Brussels is not enough. Let me see if I can make it to New York City. when I look back now, I'm like, wow, I really had like some guts to do that. So I arrived in New York in 2005 with really nothing, just my luggage. I had 2 weeks worth of money to be able to get me a place to stay and maybe some food, and then the rest I knew I was going to figure it out, and that's what I did. 17 years later, I'm still here.
So it worked out some way somehow.
It worked out somewhere.
And
I
now
mean,
you're
a lot of problems.
and now you're
Yeah.
an author, an entrepreneur, digital nomad, and
Yeah.
now your book is very interesting because you talk about the difficulties of starting a new business and growing that business in the United States, but also everywhere. It applies everywhere, right? And you focus it to women, which is also very interesting because I know it is a little bit harder to the female side to start business,
Right.
and maybe to even get
Right.
loans and partners and
Right.
all the things
Right.
that maybe the male counterpart have it easier at times. Not
Right.
necessarily the case. So tell us a little bit more about your book, how it came to mind, how it came to happen, and what process you followed, and what are your main tips and recommendations to those women who, are thinking about starting their business and become entrepreneurs as well, just like you.
Yeah. So, first of all, the book came to mind about now 3 years ago in a very vivid dream. And I was actually kind of fighting the dream back because I didn't agree with it. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want it to be my market. Like, I'm doing something else. My focus was business coaching, and I was working with women primarily, but this dream was very clear. It says you need to start sharing those stories because those stories are not heard. And it was so vivid that it woke me up. It was somewhere in the middle of the night. So I got up and then I went to the living room and I'd share the story in the book. And I sat down and I was like, well, what do I do? So the first thing I did is I opened my YouTube, because I like to do this in the morning to listen to something inspirational or motivational. And then the first thing that came in my YouTube was Wayne Dyer, which is a philosopher, and he died. But he was himself quoting Rumi, who's a poet from the 15th century from Persia. And the poem was saying something along the line that when the breeze is trying to speak to you through the night, do not go back to sleep. And he kept saying that, do not go back to sleep, do not go back to sleep, do not go back to sleep, because the breeze has secrets to tell you, do not go back to sleep. And I think that was like the sign that I needed. And I was like, holy, I need to, it woke me up. So I made some coffee, and then I went ahead and wrote my proposal, and it took about an hour. It flowed. Like, why do I need to do this? What's the story? Like, everything was flowing through me. It was really interesting. And so I wrote it, and then the next day I was like, okay, what am I doing with this? So I, at that point, was part of a co-working space. So I kind of asked around. I was like, okay, I have this idea. I don't really know how to get started. And honestly, things started to line up slowly but surely. First of all, I didn't have money to write a book. Secondly, I never wrote a book. Thirdly, my English is not, perfect. I'm like, how can I write a book in English? But I found an editor, I found a designer, I found somebody who did my copy. Like, everybody lined up, and I started building a team who they all donated their time. And I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of hours, because it took us 2.5 years to put this together. Then I posted it on social media to see who would be interested in sharing the stories. And women were coming to me left and right. So I interviewed over 100 to finally pick 28 stories, I think 27. And I picked the stories that I thought would be the most interesting and the one that would help the most people. And so in the book, we talk about many things, but the two major points I would say is the immigration stories, like you said. So the immigration stories, the challenges, why they came to the United States, how was it for them? And I found out that none of us, although the immigration system, it is what it is, and I honestly feel like it's broken, and there's a lot of things that need to change, and it's going to take a long time to fix that. But one point that I realized is that none of us has the same story. Like, it's so different, even if we apply for the same status. It's crazy.
Or if you come from the same country.
Even, it's crazy, because it really depends on so many factors. Who interviewed you? How was your status? How did you apply for your status? How long you been in this country? Like, it's so many different stories in the book, and I thought it was really interesting to share that. And the second point is that about entrepreneurship. You know, when we come to a new country, we don't think about starting a business. We're thinking about how we're going to cover our bills, how we're going to make it in this country, and how we're going to get our documentation in good standards. And all of that takes time and money. And to be honest, I feel for myself that it's almost like, although I'm very grateful for the decision I made, but I feel sometimes I lost 10 years of my life to just get the basic American rights, you know? And so I had to start over. So really, my business in my life only started when I was in my 30s. That's how like if I didn't spend this 10 years in the US before I get my documentation, I probably have a better situation if I stayed in Europe, So I'm not going back and thinking, what if, but I'm just saying it takes a long time. So for us to come here and to go through all of this, leaving our families, leaving our comfort zone, going into the unknowns, and sometimes not even being treated right, because most of us are not. We have an accent. People think people they value us many times, and it happens to me as well. You don't have the rights for many things, so you can get fired from a job. You're not even supposed to work legally on certain conditions. So there's so many things you have to navigate, and I'm like, for us to go through all of this, it means we really want to be here, and we also want to be a good contribution to this country. And so that's the reason why I wrote this book, because I felt like people needed to hear those stories of, instead of always putting negative lights on immigrants, why don't you try to see the positive ones? Like, we come here with ideas. We put actions. We make plans. We solve problems. We create business. We create employment. We invest. We pay taxes. Like, look at it this way. And let's not remember that America was founded by immigrants. And that's a point that a lot of people forget. Like, none of us are real Americans except the natives.
Correct. It does the same thing in Canada. It's
Same
funny
Canada.
that you say that, because you know that phrase, America for the Americans. But who are the Americans? We're all immigrants. Yeah. And something that I tell people here is, listen, it doesn't matter if your ancestors came here 300 years ago, 200 years ago, yesterday. You're still not fully Canadian or American, because you're still an immigrant to this land. That you were born here and this is the only country that you know is different. Yes. Right. But at the end of the day, we're all immigrants.
Yeah, indeed. And I think we should embrace each other and value each other and see what we can do together, not against each other. So this is really my hope with the book, is to talk about this immigration aspect, listen to the stories of these women, and also let's talk about, how we can get funded and start a business. That's another big deal. I think that's the main point of this book. Oh, and then we don't talk about women immigrant entrepreneurs. We talk about men, we talk about immigrants, but we don't talk about women immigrant entrepreneurs. There's no data on this. I looked it up and I did a lot of research.
And there aren't many, right?
Yeah, but no data. Like, I couldn't find any numbers. I can tell you, for example, California has a 40%, 40% of the businesses in California are owned and operated by immigrants. 40%. We are part of the economy, But immigrant is the data. It wasn't saying if it was men, women. Like, I couldn't get further details. So I can give you a lot of data on immigration here in the U.S. Yes, but not specifically women and not specifically entrepreneur.
So there's something that's lacking in the system to really kind of separate and identify the percentage there, because I bet there's a lot out there too.
Yeah, I have the book here, and I think I told you last time. Let me just get you, because I have a whole page on immigrant women and how to get funded. Not how to get funded, but we talk about, why we're not funded. And then as I was doing those research, which I think is the part that took me the longest time, I'm just going to quote one data that I got. So, for example, in the United States alone, we have 1.9 million firms in the U.S. that are owned by Hispanic women, and they have employed over 550,000 workers, and they are generating $97 billion in revenue. It's all in the book. Yeah.
Wow.
Why is it that we're not getting funded? They are. And like, why are we not getting funded? These are the things that, like, right now, if I go and try to get, funded, people, like for immigrants, they're like, well, what's your track record? They just see us as risk. And then we come here with no social security. We don't, with no credit score. These are all of the things that the bank sees us as risk. And I'm like, something has to change.
Yes, I agree with you. Something needs to change because we're hard workers and we don't come here to live out of the system. We really work hard. We want a better life, and to get a better life, we do what we need to do, which is study, work, and create businesses, right? And
yeah.
I don't know, but if I think back in the days, I would say that women are maybe even more entrepreneurs or have a entrepreneur mindset than men, because with the cooking and taking care of the kids, so a lot of businesses come just from there, from something that women do naturally almost all over the world.
Yeah.
How can people reach out to you? Where can they get the book from? What's the website and your social media?
Sure. So they can get the book on my website, and the website is Immigrant Women Entrepreneurs, just like the name of the book.com. So immigrantwomenentrepreneurs.com, they can get the copy of the book. And then if you want to, the book is also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble online. You can find it online as well. And then just my name for social media, Saloua Ibaline, and you can find me on Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about my digital nomad journey and all the places I've been to. And I love to do that. I just published a video about Brussels like 2 days ago, and that's like a lot of people like it. So yeah, so Saloua Ibaline for my social media, and Immigrant Women Entrepreneurs, we are on Instagram. Instagram and YouTube are really my two channels. I'm not really on Twitter or anything else.
Okay, awesome. And something that we do when we're about to close the interview on the podcast, we invite our invitees to say something in their mother tongue. But with you, I don't really know if I'm going to ask you to say it in French, in Arabic.
I can say French. I guess French is my first language. But what would you like me to say?
It's really for people to learn a little bit more about what you're preaching in your book. Invite them to follow you, to get the book, and also to follow the Immigrant podcast.
Oh,
that
but
you're
in
on
French.
right now. And in French is going to be even better because we're in Quebec and people are going to love it as well.
Oh yeah, that's right, in Québec. OK, on va faire en français alors. Tout d'abord, merci beaucoup de m'avoir invité à ton podcast. C'est un grand plaisir. Et alors, pour le livre, donc c'est un livre sur les histoires des femmes immigrantes ici aux États-Unis. Elles viennent de 25 pays et elles vivent dans 16 différents États aux États-Unis. Et on peut trouver le livre sur mon site Immigrant Women Entrepreneurs avec un S. Et alors, sur mes réseaux sociaux à Saloua Ibaline, Saloua-Ibaline. Voilà, bonne journée.
Merci. Et une question en français. Est-ce que tu as déjà pensé de traduire ton livre en français?
Ben oui, en fait, j'y ai pensé parce que j'ai toute une audience en Belgique qui voudrait bien avoir le livre, mais malheureusement, je ne peux pas le faire toute seule parce que j'ai fait ça self-published. Donc, j'ai fait vraiment ça toute seule avec une équipe. Donc, si je le fais en français, il faudrait que je travaille avec une maison d'édition qui voudrait bien reprendre le livre et le traduire en français. C'est la seule, parce que j'aimerais bien le faire en espagnol aussi. Donc, pour l'instant, non, malheureusement, mais peut-être dans le futur.
But I think that now through the podcast, what we're going to do is to invite people that are willing to help out with this project.
Yeah.
That are translators to French and translators to Spanish to help out, to reach out to you through social media, and you can work it out from there.
I think the translation is not really the most important part. I think the most difficult part is the design, because this book is a lot of photos and quotes, and so it would have to get a whole designer to put it back together. And if we do find someone, then I'll be happy to. And then another thing is I really want to see this project grow. So I'm hoping to do another volume. I'm hoping to include women in Canada and in different countries. I think our stories need to be heard. And then my really, really big love would be, or my hope is that I would love to create a docu-series based on this book and then pitch Netflix. That would be really my hope, is that it gets picked up by something like this, like Oprah or Netflix. We really need more media coverage on this, you know?
I think so. this topic's so interesting and important because it happens in every single country. Immigrants
Right.
go through a lot of the same hassles no matter where they move to.
Well, I hope people will send me messages on Instagram and they'll let me know, hey, I heard your podcast. That'll really make me happy if they listen to it.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Saloua.
Thank
You
you.
for being on the show, and best of luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye from
Bye-bye.
Arizona.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
This was Immigrant Podcast with Robinson.